Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
It's the Insight for the Blind, and Matt Corey and I were talking about it. He's actually a bassoonist, a very, very talented bassoonist who now has gotten into another organization. But you know, when you're a musician, there's nothing that you can't do and do well with enthusiasm. So thank you for being here, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Anita.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing to be a musician, and you know, you think about it, we have so many famous people who are blind who are musicians.
That's true.
And when you know, and then of course we've had Helen Keller, and we've had people who are blind. Tell me what you love about this organization.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe you should tell us what the organization does first.
Yes, Insight for the Blind has a very specific mission, and it's for the last 44 years, the singular mission has been to record books and magazines for the Library of Congress's Talking Books program. And this was something that our founder set out to do in 1970. I think it was the early part of the 70s when she retired and moved to Fort Lauderdale. Her name was Caroline Mansur. And she had an idea that she would create a studio that would be all volunteers that produce this material. So it started in the back room of a law office of a friend of hers, and eventually the telephone pioneers found a plot of land in Fort Lauderdale and built our current facility, which has been open since, I want to say, 1977. So that's where we are. We record Smithsonian Magazine, poetry, Southern Living, current biography, along with other titles that the Library of Congress assigns to us each month.
Are you looking for volunteers?
We're always looking for volunteers.
Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So we want to let's just start off by giving a way for people to get in touch with you. What number or where are you? See, I have a thing on the web, your ccpompano.org.
That's where you would go to get tickets to our fundraising event.
Oh, okay, but before we do that, let's just be able to get you gets on the web.
Yeah, our website is insightfortheblind.org.
Okay.
And our phone number is 954-522-5057.
All right, that's for someone who might want to be a volunteer, but now you have a wonderful fundraiser. Before we work at fundraising, people need to know more about the organization so they know why they want to come to the fundraiser.
Yes, so each month we get this material, and we don't choose the materials that we record. It's assigned to us by the program, and that's so that the Talking Books program and the Library of Congress can make sure that nothing is getting duplicated and that it's efficient. So when we get our magazines in each month, I wish it was as easy as taking it and putting it in the studio, opening it up, and hitting record. Unfortunately, if you've looked at an issue of National Geographic Traveler, for example.
I love it, yes.
So much of that is visual in the way it's formatted. The narrator would have a difficult time on the fly being able to navigate through the text to read that. Not to mention all of the crazy pronunciations of people and countries and things that might come up in any issue. So, firstly, we take those magazines and we paginate them so that they make sense, and so that the narrator knows they're going to go from number 1 to number 2 to number 3 and can make the best use of their time in the studio. After that, once everything's read, then we have to do an internal listen. And that's usually done by one of our staff members, where we'll listen for mouth noises, popped P's, things of that sort, maybe a mispronunciation or a skipped word here and there. And then there'll be another round where we go back in the studio and do the corrections on that so that it's perfect when we send it out.
That's just absolutely wonderful. I'm so happy to have met you because I want to get people to volunteer and do this, and And all right, so now the people who, the Talking Books, they don't do this through you. They usually do this through organizations, just like the Lighthouse, don't they? I mean, how do they get the Talking Books? Oh, the library.
That's a great question.
Library.
Yes, the library system, the National Library System, and the local library systems do participate in the Talking Books program. In the Fort Lauderdale main library, there's a whole Talking Books library on a floor. with a bunch of cartridges that they have ready to go. And if they don't have something that a patron wants to listen to, now through the Braille and Audio Reading Download service, which is part of the program, they're able to download it instantly, put it on a cartridge for a patron, and either hand it to them if they're in the library or mail it to them for free.
This is so absolutely wonderful. So people, though, it's funny, they have something for the blind, but hearing impaired is a little bit more difficult. Now, there is an organization called Clear Captions, and if you call them on the phone, then you know that it's all written out what the person's saying.
Yes. And
so
they operate through a relay.
Yes. This is just marvelous that you're here. I did not know about your organization. I did know about Talking Books because I've had friends who live with those talking books. They have to have them. That's what keeps them, in going. Otherwise, they'd be in another world, a silent world.
That's what we don't get a lot of interaction with the patrons of Talking Books because we produce for the National Library Service and they distribute it, and because of privacy concerns and things like that, we don't know who's listening to the stuff that we've recorded. So sometimes it feels a little bit like you're in a vacuum, like you're just overwhelmed with audio and you're producing it and then you don't really hear back a lot of feedback. But I had the opportunity to interview some members of a group from the Circle of Love that meets at Insight, and they're all visually impaired to some degree. Some are totally blind, some are partially blind, and I was able to speak with them, and that refrain that you said is something that we heard a lot that day, is that it's our connection to the outside world. And not to mention, one of the gentlemen that I spoke to, I asked him what his favorite titles were, and he's only been using the service for 18 months. He had macular degeneration, and he referred to the Louis L'Amour series. And as it turns out, we had a narrator who's no longer with us. He passed about 10 years ago. His name was Phil Regensdorf, who narrated that entire series at Insight, and he did it back in the days of the open reel tape before I came on board. So it was really heartening to hear that they've taken all of the older recordings too and remastered them to digital so that they're still available.
So I have to ask you another question before we talk about your fundraiser. Do they have, like, I've always been listening to books on tape. That's been I love that. And they have music. Have you ever put music on with yours?
That's not something that we're allowed to do.
I know, but have they ever considered it?
Well, no, because it's actually a great segue into something that I wanted to tell you. After we're done with our internal review, we send it to a quality assurance section, and our particular quality assurance section is a library in Cincinnati. They listen to about 60% of everything that we record. They can't listen to everything, but 60% of each title that we submit to them, and they check our work. So if I was to sneak a music track on there, I would get in big trouble for copyright reasons and all sorts of other reasons, but it's just not something that we do. And also, if you were to, on your app, if you're listening to a book, if you were to speed that up and listen at a higher speed, that would change the way the music would participate with the narration as well. So it would be fun to produce that, but that's not anything we're allowed to do.
So the books on tape, which I started listening to in the early 70s, which was amazing, they differ. They differ, don't they, from what you're doing? They
do a little bit. There is actually a greater participation now between the commercial producers and the National Library Service, so that there doesn't have to be a repeat of a recording. Like, for example, when Barack Obama's book came out and he narrated it in his own voice, they were able to work it out with the publishing company to just use that.
Great.
Instead of having to wait 6 or 8 months, it was available to the patrons virtually the same time that it was available for people that bought the book. So there is a more cooperation in that regard happening. And what was your...
Well, I wanted to do is talk about, now you're going to have a fundraiser, because you have to have funds. This is a not-for-profit organization, and it sounds like you do wonderful things. So tell us what you're doing now.
On Monday, October 21st, we're doing our second concert event at the Pompano Beach Cultural Center. Last year we did a phenomenal concert called Hollywood Live, and it was a similar format to the one that we're doing this year, which is called Broadway Live. And it's basically South Florida's greatest musical theater performers and singers performing a love letter to Broadway. And I'm super excited.
You're in heaven because it's music, and that's what you love.
It is what I love, but it's also something, for a small nonprofit, I think it's difficult sometimes to have events and to do a gala when you don't really have an infrastructure of event promotion and the organization. So, for example, our development director, as everyone on our staff at Insight, wears multiple hats. He buys the necessities for our kitchen at Insight and the sodas, and if the air conditioning breaks, he's sucking out the drain line for that. So I'm still, even though I'm now doing the administrative work at Insight, I'm also still under the headphones for 6 hours a day editing and cleaning files. So we need to do an event that's in our wheelhouse, and we have so many people that are in the arts that are involved with Insight that the concert event kind of seemed like a good fit for us.
It is. And what time does it start?
The doors open at 6:30 for VIP ticket holders. Those tickets are $125, and there's wine and champagne and food, catered past appetizers and the like. It's a lot of fun. There'll be live music at the VIP reception as well. And then the doors open at 7:15 for general admission. That's a $45 ticket, and there'll be plenty of seats. If people haven't reserved their tickets already, it's fine to come the night of, and there'll be plenty of good seats to be
Okay,
had.
now I've been to the Pompano Cultural Theater. It's beautiful. It's brand new.
It's brand new. It's really, really
Right,
nice.
I know you take Atlantic.
Yes.
And it's right on the right side as you cross the railroad tracks, right? It's
Correct.
Just
If you're going east, yes.
Okay, that's really wonderful. So, okay, so people can go. So if they wanted to contribute, they're going to go ahead. They can go onto your website, or they can do the ccpompano.org.
Yes,
which is the...
If you'd like to attend the event, you can get your tickets online at ccpompano.org. We'll be on the first page of events because the event is happening in a week. And if you'd like to just contribute and learn more about our organization, our website is insightfortheblind.org, and we have a donate page there, which is secure and all of that good stuff. And this is really the kickoff to our annual fundraising drive. We don't solicit a lot during the year. We confine it to one annual mailing, which we do in November, and we are thrilled that we have a board member who has again agreed to match dollar for dollar up to $25,000
Wow.
every cent that is contributed between now and the end of the year. So
That's absolutely wonderful. My guest is Matt Corey. He is the CEO and president of Insight for the Blind. And they would love volunteers. They would love for you to come to their October 21st event. General admission is $45. They come in at $7.15. If you want to really contribute big, it's $125.
that's right.
Is that right? And you get VIP treatment. But it's a wonderful thing now that we know more about it. Insight for the Blind. And so it's kind of like a sister organization to the national organization that does this.
Yes,
Really,
we participate in their program because they have the means of doing all of the logistical support for the talking books. If we were to try to do it independently, as I mentioned, we might be repeating titles.
Sure.
And we just don't have the reach of the national government.
So are there Insight for the Blind organizations all over the country?
No, we're the largest volunteer studio of its kind in the country, right here in Fort Lauderdale. And the distinction is that there are other studios that produce material for this program. There are in Louisville and New York and Denver, and they're contracted by the government to do this work and submit bids, and it's a competitive process. Insight doesn't take any federal money or any state money, any government money.
Why not?
It's strictly privately funded.
Okay, so that's my question. Why don't you do that also?
This was the mission that was started in the 70s, was to augment the catalog as opposed to just participate in
I see.
in the production of the material. So
It's very brave. So
We
it's been
stay true
going
to
on
that.
since 1970.
in the early 70s, yes.
I can't. Wow, that really is amazing to hear this, because it's so little known. I never heard of this until you got to us in the email. And Kay Renz is a wonderful woman, and she, is a friend, and I know that she only does things that are really good. And she's the one that told me, can you do something to help them? And I said, sure, let's do this.
Kay is the best, and
She
I
is.
thank her from the bottom of my heart for everything that she's done in promoting
Yes.
this event in our organization, as well as Sherry Uppin, who's directing the event. She's an old friend of mine, and I knew that once she was out from under her obligations with the National Society of Arts and Letters, she might have a little bit of time for Insight. So I had a lunch date with her and asked her to join our board, and she said, well, I don't know, what can I do? And I said, I've got an idea. And so we talked about the first concert, and now we're doing the second one. Hopefully it'll be something that we can continue.
Now, who actually is performing? Where did you get the people?
Well, my wife is an actress, and
Figures.
I'm also a sound designer, and Sherry's a director. So between the three of us, we also have, well, my wife's name is Lindsay Corey. She'll be singing a selection from Jekyll and Hyde.
Huh?
We also have another staff member, Sandy Stock, who is doing a Janis Joplin number. And then the rest of the performers are Annalise Jensen, Michael Scott Ross, Mark Sanders, and from Broadway, Avery Summers.
Oh, I know Avery. Oh, I love her.
Yeah, she's...
I asked her that if she wanted. She's been on the show before for other things. Oh, Avery's fantastic.
We have Avery, Libra, and Dean Landheis, who is more of an operatic singer. So we have a little bit of everything there, and I wanted to especially mention, I think what's different about our program, we have a narrator and a singer. His name is Jeffrey Bruce. I don't know if you know Jeffrey.
No.
He's really what makes the difference in this being a review or something special like a show. And so what he does is, in between each of the numbers, he'll give a little bit of trivia and maybe some backstage gossip that happened when the production of Jekyll and Hyde was going up. And
Perfect.
so he really adds so much to the night, because he's constantly interjecting the fun stories from behind the scenes and historical.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You should be so excited. I know you are excited.
I'm excited, yeah.
Yeah, you are, and this is going to be a wonderful thing, and we have to just get as much, this is what this show will now be heard on Saturday, which is perfect. Because you're not going to do this until the following Monday.
Yeah, the one night onlys are a little stressful, because we have a Sunday tech rehearsal, and then a Monday dress rehearsal, and then we do it.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
Yeah, but it's a wonderful. It's so good that you do this. But I also want to try to help you get more volunteers, because I can understand now why you need them. Now, volunteers they're not the people pasting things and doing stuff with letters. I guess more importantly, there need to be someone who can read, right?
Right. We train all of our new volunteers to the volunteers work in pairs in the booth. So you have an engineer, which we call at Insight, we call them a monitor. They run the recording, and they also follow along and help with any pronunciations if something needs to be looked up on the fly. And then you have the narrator in the booth. So we train all of our new volunteers to be able to do both, so we have flexibility. If someone goes on vacation and their partner is not in, they can flip around and go in the booth, or vice versa. And really, the important thing is you just need to be a natural reader. You don't have to be a broadcaster. You don't have to be an actor. That's not necessary. You just have to do the best you can to control any sort of regionalism that you might have in your voice.
But you have to probably test them first,
yes,
because not everybody can fulfill what they want to do.
Yes, it's kind of like flying a plane. A lot of our new volunteers will come in and kind of sit in the passenger seat in the recording sessions for 3 or 4 times until they feel comfortable to run it themselves with someone next to them. And then when they're comfortable to try reading, then we go in the booth and take it from there. And we give constructive feedback along the way, so we don't like to leave anyone hanging out to dry.
I have a friend who lives in Monaco more than half of the year, and he's been a major talk show host, television, in New York for years. But he's fabulous, and he does things with me. And I think he's going to come in November. When he does, I'm going to ask him, and I'm going to have him then come and talk to you, because you'd be very fortunate to have him, and I think he'd love it, because he actually did some things with the Lighthouse for the Blind in Miami, and that there was a little bit of conflict because he's not here all the time. So they wanted somebody who, I'll tell you what he actually did. He took on to take a lot of there were classes, and he went and tried to help them learn how to do radio shows.
Oh, wow.
And he did a good job, but then I don't know, but political, I'm not sure what happened, but he was very disappointed because he was having kids do wonderful things that he was training them for. But he'd be a good person for me to get to you, and I'm going to do that as soon as he comes down. I'm going to tell him.
That's wonderful.
And his name is Neil, but I will definitely work on that and see if he can do that for you, okay?
I might add, because that reminded me of something else I wanted to tell you. In the past year, we started what I've been calling, for lack of a better name, the Insight Podcast Initiative, and I'm hoping to grow this to be a number of kind of curated podcasts under our umbrella, like a network.
That's great. Yes.
And maybe we can speak about that.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. He's very good, and he's very nice and very smart and very experienced, and so we'll see. That's one little thing that came out of this. So I'm curious, though, as a bassoonist, you said that you are at least doing some volunteer musical work. You do it with, it's called the Symphonium?
Oh, yeah, I play with the Boca Symphonia. That's a professional orchestra that does 4 subscription series each year, and that was kind of an offshoot of the Florida Phil. The principal trumpeter of the Florida Phil, Jeffrey Kay, started that group, I want to say I think it's been 15 years now. We're almost immediately after the bankruptcy.
And where do you perform?
At the St. Andrew's School in Boca.
Oh, really?
On Sundays, yes. I can't think of that website off the top of my head. I think it's symphonia.org.
Because I was thinking that you may have gone over to Lynn, but because they have a big, beautiful theater there. But you do it at St. Andrews. At
St. Andrews, yes.
Okay, that's great. And so you look forward to that. What kind of music do you play?
It's a chamber orchestra, so we don't get to do Mahler and the huge work, but we do a lot of Mozart and Beethoven, and the programming is actually really interesting with that group. They mix in some lesser known works with some war horses, so that it's a nice marriage of all of the.
Well, you need to let me know about that too, and maybe I can help you promote that, because that's and so that's a not-for-profit. Is just your small group just performs.
Yes.
How many are there?
There's about 45 members of that orchestra, and we do four subscription concerts every season. So between usually December through April, and then that orchestra also performs at the Meisner Boca Festival of the Arts.
Oh, good. And so how often do you have to practice for that?
We do 3 rehearsals, one of which is a dress rehearsal, and then we do the concert, and that's it.
Oh, that's all?
Yeah, it's pretty standard for an orchestra to rehearse that amount. We might be shy 1 rehearsal. If it was a major orchestra, they would probably do 4.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. So that keeps your hand in the music part of this, which I think is very important for your, So in the Insight, tell us a little bit about the person that started this. I know that the woman that now...
Oh, sure.
Yeah, she sounds wonderful.
Yeah, Caroline was wonderful. I interviewed for her the week after the Florida Philharmonic went bankrupt. And I had brought a folder with my resume and a CD with some audio that I had produced. I wasn't quite sure what the position was, but she was looking for someone to come in and convert from the analog reel-to-reel recordings to the new digital mandate from the Library of Congress. So I went in and I put my folder on her desk. She started talking to me much like you started talking to me immediately when I came in, and she didn't open it, she didn't look. She walked me around and said, "When can you start?"
She just knew, of course.
It was truly a blessing,
yes.
and she was an incredible person to work with. I worked with her for about 10 years, and she retired and moved to New Mexico to be closer to her daughter, and she passed in the last 6 or 7 years or so.
And so who do you work with now?
When she retired, I was promoted to
the position
CEO.
that she had.
Yes.
So this is pretty special. Well, I have to tell you, it's been just joyful, Matt, and I look forward to seeing you again and seeing if I can do some things to help you. So it's Matt Corey, President and CEO of Insight for the Blind. He is the President and CEO, and they're putting on this wonderful event October 21st over there at the Pompano. It's the Cultural Center.
That's
and
right.
You can get more information on the event at ccpompano.org, or you can go to their website, which is insightfortheblind.org. And thank you very much for telling us all about this great show.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.